of kids go on other buses to, their friend's parents' house so they can babysit and stuff. Or sometimes there's so many reasons of why kids need to go on, different buses. A lot of people in this district have multiple kids, and I know for like the sports and stuff, sometimes, they, take buses for different reasons. Also, a huge thing too is sometimes they just want to go on a play date. They just want to take a bus to go to other friend's house to take a play date. So I'm not sure why there's no green slips, like why the kids can't go on other buses. If it's because of COVID, it doesn't make any sense. Again, because we don't do COVID tracing, the kids are all mixed together. I don't know what the difference is if they're on the bus, with the normal people that they're on with or different kids. I don't see how that makes a difference. The other thing is the no freshman orientation. That I'm not sure why that and other orientations were canceled. I know for the young ones, there's a lot of new kids coming into the building, or a lot of kids have anxiety. So this school, which I'm grateful for, focuses a lot on mental health. And in taking away the freshman orientation and other orientation for the kids to meet their teachers, I think that causes a lot of anxiety and undue stress. And with some people may disagree or may agree, but I think the biggest transition for kids is going from middle school to high school, and having a freshman orientation is almost like a rite of passage. It's something that they look forward to. It's something special for them, and it helps ease their stress and their anxiety. So I would just encourage you to, if you could please reverse the decision and to allow the green slip so that the children can go on, whatever bus that they may need to go on. We all need to stick together to help each other with the kids. And if you can please allow the orientations, especially the freshman orientation, it's so important, so crucial, and the kids love it and they look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, please move on to Dr. Mann and his update.
I didn't know he was coming this quickly. No problem.
Okay, thank you. First, it's very exciting to be back after a month, and I have a number of slides that I don't think it's going to be but lots of exciting things to talk about as we start.
I don't think the mic is working.
I'll just speak up. So there's lots of exciting things for us to talk about as we start 22-23. And I have tonight's presentation broken down into 5 parts. The first, we want to talk to the board and the community about our strategic objectives for the year, things that we want to accomplish. You'll see that some of them are broken down into implementation because we've been planning to do things last year, and then some of them will be planning, which we hope to implement in the following year. And they're broad-based. We have a discussion to talk about with respect to the stadium project, which is moving along very nicely. We have some projects coming up in addition to the stadium project, namely the remediation at our intermediate school, and we have to talk about the finance. Every 6 months, we're required to review our health and safety plan, so we have a few slides on that. And then finally, and I think most excitingly, we have some things to talk about as far as developments with new enrollment that I think will be very, very helpful to our students. respect to strategic objectives, this is what I happen to call them. These will work into ultimately goals for us to accomplish as an administrative team in 22-23. And during the year, we will periodically come to give you updates on this. But we think it's important to get things out and say, this is what we plan to do. And boards and communities can hold us accountable for getting these things out. So the first strategic objective is the implementation of foundations and GEOs in K through 3. We spoke a lot about it last year, finding the phonics program, developing these decodable texts, and we are ready to roll. And so when you walk around this year, and I would encourage board members to maybe come out and see the foundations being taught. We're very, very excited about being able to implement this. Our teachers have been trained in a lot of professional development. The materials are here. I think, frankly, a lot of people are excited about it. So we're going to be implementing this, and we spoke a lot about last year, getting this going. And I'm grateful to the board for the support they've shown in getting us to this point. We also will be implementing Read Well, which is a special education reading intervention, K through 3, that was recently approved by the board, and this will offer some very structured support to our special education students who will benefit from this, again, highly structured program, and this will be rolled out in the fall. As far as planning, we recognize that the foundations and the GEOs are not prime programs, but rather supplemental. So we will be looking for, during this year, a core reading program in grades K through 3. We intend to collaborate with district staff. We'll be reporting publicly our discussions with the board, and we hope that come spring in 2023, we'll be able to bring to the board a recommendation for us to adopt a core reading program that we'll be implementing at this time next year. We also want to develop and implement a process to extend the K-3 literacy initiative to grades 4 and 6. So as we implement 4 and 6, as we K through 3 next fall, we want also to be able to come here and say, look, if we did very, very well and move kids along in grades K through 3, well, what comes in grades 4, 5, 6? So how will we expand and grow this literacy initiative from K through 3 on up through the program? So we should have some recommendations to bring to you in the spring of 2023 on that. Now, we have had a tremendous outcry from our teachers, right, to their enormous credit. And they're saying, we want to do new things, we want to do exciting things, we want to develop our curriculum. I can say specifically English and social studies. We had some great meetings with those departments. So with limited bandwidth, so to speak, we have to identify some really critical needs outside of literacy K through 3, because while that's important, it's not the only thing that we do here. And then we hope to be able to identify some additional curriculum projects beyond K through 3 literacy to move forward in these areas where our teachers are, to their enormous credit, saying, hey, we want to move, how can we be supported by the central office? And then also, we will be implementing, we plan to dual enrollment. We spoke a lot about that last year. We will be implementing dual enrollment this fall. And I did have a whole final section of this, but I want to conclude on this topic because a lot of good things are to be said about it. So we want to develop dual. So moving forward, though, we're just not going to say, okay, we're good. We want to grow and build upon it. So we're going to be developing this year dual enrollment pathways that will lead to certifications and associate degrees. We're going to explore college level examination program, CLEP, including the approval of Lehigh as a school, as an authorized exam center. So hopefully at this point next year, we'll be ready to be offering tests to give college credit for kids who are taking our courses here. It'll help us to kind of measure the rigor of our courses. We want to expand and enhance partnerships, including continued implementation of current partnerships, including St. Luke's student engagement programs, which are well underway, and we'll have more reports on those as the year unfolds. We want to develop a comprehensive process to collect and analyze student achievement data, and one of the deliverables, so to speak, is in November. We will be here before you talking about student achievement and data and reports. And while that will be an ongoing conversation, a really big benchmark along the way will be our public discussion of our student achievement in November. This next strategic objective is one that frankly worries me. It's going to be a big challenge for us. But we need to determine a district-wide strategy for hardware and software utilization. Currently, we have iPads with our kids in elementary. We have Chromebooks in intermediate school, and then we have Apple Mac machines on the way up middle school and high school. So we have numbers of different platforms. Some are thin clients, others are actual computer machines. And we also have lots of different software support. So we do Google Classrooms, we do Canvas, we do Blackboard, we have all kinds of things in Apple. And there's an urgency to this because our lease with Apple is coming up. Right? We've been paying for the last 3 years over $300,000 per year to lease our machines. And so coming in the spring, we have to do something. And I think just to renew a lease without giving really careful consideration of what we do, what we need, why we need it, and how can we better incorporate all the different things into a unified plan, a unified technology plan, is going to take a lot of our time, a lot of our effort, and a lot of our focus, but it's a very, very important thing to do. So this is an important goal that we'll be working on collectively from the technology aspect, the instructional aspect. We'll be asking for input from our teachers. And so it's a very, very big thing and one that's kind of driven by a time-sensitive issue, which is the Apple leases. Those are our academic objectives. We have some strategic objectives for facilities. We'll hear more about the stadium project, but Mr. Pepe and his staff will be working very hard on that project throughout the course of the year in many different ways. We also will be taking on the intermediate school structural project. We have the architect hired. Yes. I don't know if it's major business. Right, well, there it is, that's it. So we anticipate having bid documents out in late winter for construction of some kind coming up in spring. So that will be another objective or goal for us to accomplish. We also will be identifying smaller major maintenance programs with respect to roof and HVAC. We've made some great strides in developing a multi-year schedule. And we'll be managing all functions of bidding and construction for projects. We think likely starting off with HVAC at the high school and various smaller scale roof and repair projects. Now, with all that, we have to develop a plan for construction. To finance this construction. We'll be talking a little bit about this later in this presentation. But not only do we have to plan these projects, we have to pay for them, and we'll be looking at a number of options and most efficient options to accomplish that. The next strategic objective involves operational efficiency. And so we must, during the course of this year, strengthen our internal processes and controls regarding purchasing. As we look through, that's an area I think that we can build on some of our current processes. We want to identify, improve, and curtail inefficient functions. These include service, duplication, and underutilization of technology. We want to make sure we are deploying our staff in the most efficiently possible. And then we all are aware that we have the recommendations from within report that we'll be focusing on during the course of the year. Under policy and administrative regulation development, Mr. Pigeon is going to be overseeing this effort. we're going to develop, and this was long discussed by the board. If you remember that the board approved a contract with PSBA to develop policies and administrative regulations. And so we'll be implementing that process during the course of the year. We want to make sure that we do this right. And in doing it right, I think will involve develop and implement an internal administrative process so our staff and our teachers will be able to have input in appropriate policies. We want to develop and implement a process of review from legal counsel. It will be critical for us to have a process that involves our school board to get feedback on these policies, these proposed policies and guidelines. We want to develop internal practices that will institutionalize approved policies and administrative guidelines. Approving them is one thing, operationalizing them is another, so that will be part of this goal. We want to establish a schedule of ongoing policy review. We want to acquire all technical competencies to utilize vendor services. So that's a goal. Likely will take 2 years before we finish that job. It's also important for us to take on an analysis of our staffing expenses. We want to first create an organizational chart to reflect current operations, which we'll bring to the board for approval. We spend a lot of our money on medical benefits, and so we have to undertake an effort to understand the structure and organization and develop recommendations with respect to the consortium through which we buy these benefits. We want to conduct an internal review of the district's medical roles to ensure benefits are provided to eligible employees. For example, if our dependents are turning 27, 28, we want to make sure that we're not continuing to provide benefits to those. So that process of reviewing our internal roles would be a good one. And we want to review our plan design and medical appeal procedures. We want to work with our consortium consultants. We want to perhaps give consideration of plan design audit to make sure that benefits we're receiving are reflective of our plan design. And I think we'll have an interest looking at third-party administrators for our prescription drugs, how rebates and discounts are handled. And we look forward to reporting the results of this effort to the board sometime in the spring of 2023. So that concludes the strategic objectives for the year. These essentially are now being translated into goals for our administrative staff. And then we'll be measuring those goals during the course of the year, very often with reports to the board along the way to kind of mark our progress. So any questions on the strategic objectives before we move on to this stage? Yes.
Thanks for that presentation. I look forward to hearing about the progress throughout the year. I had one question, one was just a comment and a tag on. When you mentioned the comprehensive process to collect and analyze student achievement data,
Yes.
Another discussion point in the district and in the board for a while has been the need or the desire to collect more data about our alumni and our graduates, not only as something to mark where are students going and what are they doing and how could we better assist them in the places, where they're landing, but also as a resource for, community building connections and opportunities for our students, not only through experiences in colleges, but also in post-high school employment and just those kinds of opportunities. We don't really have a solid, my understanding is, we don't really have a solid grasp on our alumni or a record of our alumni or even a way of communicating with them, which would also ties into the idea of, as I brought up a couple times at board meetings and other board members have as well, but I keep bringing it back up in hopes that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Some sort of reviving and revamping the educational foundation in our district so that we have a way of having our community financially support some of these projects through philanthropy and collecting funds. And I think a robust alumni list of students would also help that through fundraising. And I'd be open to the opportunity to bring on an administrative level staff position to that I believe in other districts is self-funded to spearhead that effort. That was just my alumni plug. And then the other question I had, but I'll pause there if I don't want to take the mic away from somebody else who wanted to comment on that or had a point about that. But my other question was, let me check my notes. Oh, miscellaneous facility item, the small scale kinds of things. And thank you for that update. I've attended the facilities meetings, and that's been great to keep me up to date. and learn about some of the things going on there. And I appreciate the ice brick has been made an identified as an immediate safety issue, and action is being taken on that. Appreciate that. I was just wondering about a follow-up when you said miscellaneous roofing projects, about timelines, because one of the things that I remember from a couple facilities meetings ago, when there was a roof report, the individual who's the expert on roofing said that, and I think everyone in the room is kind of shocked at this, that the Liberty Bell was a particular concern from a timeline perspective, and also from a safety perspective due to the nature of the possible, eventually, not at this time, but eventually the weight of the roof could be an issue because of moisture up there. Could you discuss, do we have an idea, I haven't heard it discussed in facilities meetings, but I missed the last one about a roof timeline. I believe the gentleman said he would recommend summer of 2023, but that was not possible because of supplies and et cetera. Do you have an update or an idea of when that timeline will be discussed?
I can give you a quick update.
Thanks.
Basically, based on the information, it was actually pretty well received by us budgetarily. So the update will really come when we start working on the budget and figure out where we're gonna park the first roof project. But there was nothing of immediate need like the IS school. So we're not moving forward at this point, but the school you referenced will be at the higher end of the priority chart. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure we clean something up there because I don't recall this, and that was in our meetings and that presentation, there was no discussion of safety with respect to excessive loads on the roof because of this.
That's correct, not at this time. And that's why I didn't say anything, because you said not at this time. So
Right,
there is
right.
no safety issue.
No, I did say, I clarified, there's no safety issue at this time, but I think what he brought up that was surprising was he described it was a great presentation of the technical layering of roof, and eventually what the concern would eventually be is moisture building up in those areas. But not at this time, absolutely not at this time. He recommended it be the first roofing project, but I understand the committee, with the supply, it's just not, possible right now, but thanks for that update.
Well, since now it's been brought up, and now we know what it isn't, can we describe what it is exactly that we're dealing with at the Liberty Bell briefly? I mean, I understand there's dedicated meetings, but just since it's been brought up.
How's that? There you go. So basically what he said is there was a roof put on top of another roof. So there's not a safety issue, but it creates a barrier and condensation starts to build. So that was the concern, that if condensation continues to build and you don't alleviate it, then eventually you're gonna end up having to replace more insulation and more of the roof. So that's pretty much what the discussion really entailed. But all in all, most of our roofs came back pretty good. And in addition to the visual inspections, we had thermal scans done of all the roofs to see whether or not there was moisture and to what degree under each of the roofs. We were really expecting pretty poor results to come back from the high school, and high school came back very well. So, that's why in the prioritization, our focus is gonna end up going to Liberty Bell as far as the first roof we would look to replace. No,
I think it was somewhat unflattering analysis of the construction company. The rebel at the time. So yes, it's an issue that has to be addressed, but it's not urgent at this point as is some of the other projects that we have on here. So that said, yes,
So a question based upon something that you mentioned on the health insurance.
yes.
And I hope this is not the case, but in evaluating the coverage for beneficiaries, currently, I'm assuming the Blue Cross provider is removing those that are reaching the age of 26, correct?
Yeah, I have no reason to think
Okay.
that this is not being done. This is not driven by anything, but just as a matter of practice. We want to make sure that this is being, and hopefully it's just as much as saying, oh my gosh, they do this already, it's all good, check the box.
Okay,
So we have kind of a set of things we want to check all of our boxes, and we're prepared to go as deep or as
Yeah, 'cause-
superficially as is necessary to get it done.
yeah, I mean, traditionally, that's a health insurance entity that we're paying premiums for, that they should be removing and auditing those individuals. So I just wanted to make sure that they were doing their job, because it shouldn't fall to our administrative staff to verify that. maybe spot check it, but it really should be on the health provider to do so.
And we want to make sure that's happening. But there are instances I have read about in other places where sometimes those things come up. And so it's just a matter of process, to be sure. But there's nothing that we need to think that is happening at all. So that's all right, we'll move on to the stadium project. Okay. First, I want to begin by offering a thank you to members of the facility committee for the many hours of work on this project, and Emily, by extension, your attendance at meetings, you know it. So just a quick rundown of some history. The architect was hired in 2020. The responsibility of the architect included obtaining required permits, designing the facility, coordination of the bidding process, which at the time was envisioned as spec bid build, develop specs, put it out to bid, and get the bids back. And then overseeing construction. The scope of the project has been narrowed, focused on the facility at Lehigh Middle School, but we're not talking about, at this point, fields and other locations. Is that Chris? Oh, okay. Okay. So after very careful consideration, and we've been talking about this over the course of the months, the process was changed from spec bid build to design build, culminating with the request for qualifications issued by the district on May 2022. This presentation is posted, so anyone who wants to click this link, they can get to the RFP and some of the other things there. So under the design build, materials are obtained through an approved purchasing consortium. Proposals are vetted to identify the greatest value rather than the lowest cost. Highly qualified vendors responded to the RFQ. We had a really good group of people who expressed interest in this project. Following tabulation of the proposals, and you can click that link to see the actual tabulations, and interviews by the facility committee, Shaw Sports Turf and Athletic Fields of America were selected to recommend to the full board to complete the project. The design build nature of the project allows for an interactive process to reach a final design that provides the greatest value to the district. The process has been ongoing with administration. The facility committee met on August 2nd to develop a final recommendation for the board. So that's the quick history that gets us to right now. And so the project itself involves the replacement of the natural grass with a high-quality synthetic turf surface, including shock-absorbing pad underneath the playing surface. And that little parentheses there, I changed the background color. But I want to get to the link because I know this was important. If you watch if this works, it'll appear. Because where are the editing features here?
You may need to do the presentation.
Okay. All right. Chris, no, but I want to change it so it's blank. I want to change that to white. Usually it's eight. All right. Well, listen. You can see that hidden there is safety. I didn't need to be safety, but I know Dr. Serene and many others have asked about the safety of the fill and all that. So there's a link here that will take anyone interested to.
So just like the pad, the safety is hidden in the presentation and
Yes,
under
just
the
like the
term.
pad, it is
Good to
hidden
know.
in the presentation. Let me get back to the slideshow. So if you click between those parentheses, it'll take you to some resources on the safety of.
Do you have
Oh, you're saying that's a link, that if we click on that, it'll take to a resource
Yes,
about safety?
exactly, yes.
Ah,
It's a
thank
hidden
you.
link
Thank you.
that takes you to resources on the safety of the pad.
Even better.
But,
And is this also attached to the agenda? Am I missing that? Sorry. I
yeah,
didn't know.
it's posted, so
Oh,
the public has access.
And
the
that's
board
how
has
we get
access,
to that link on
And I
safety.
will change that to a non-hidden link.
Because it was a link, it's blue.
Yeah,
But they changed the background color to blue. So now
Yeah, that was.
I'm with you now. So when you also, earlier in your presentation, when left was blank.
Yes, that was blank.
That was also
And
linked?
that was also linked. Yes,
Excellent.
lots of very good hidden links. It's like Easter egg hunts. So.
And just where is this exactly posted for the public? Because I didn't see it in the agenda. I mean, I feel like this might be a good opportunity to explain quickly that we have switched the agenda format for everyone, because I think it's a little confusing.
It is. And so,
Sorry, I didn't.
so, and where is this posted? Under the board section or not to call, I know you're doing things. So,
Because I have the agenda up and I only see a link for the financial agreement later in the agenda. I didn't see this. I have it open from my email.
It was not released out, the presentation was not released out to the public.
Okay.
But we can include it when the minutes are
so my
posted
fault
onto the
saying it's out there.
website.
It will be out there. This is intended to be for public review.
I wouldn't be too concerned about that. In the past, this stuff comes out afterwards, if that, so I know you're going to put it out there, after, like it has been, I think, in other meetings.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to ask to make sure because there are a lot of people aren't here.
Yes,
So.
no, we definitely will get this out with links that actually show that.
And just as someone who's been a community member coming to board meetings before I was a board member, the minutes do always, at least in my knowledge, have all of those links. You're absolutely right, Stu. If we could also attach it to the agenda kind of as a post, just so people who are following along, it might be easier to find in both places.
We'll get
It
this
is always in
posted
there.
as many places
Yep.
as possible.
But it is always in
wanted
there.
this out.
The only reason I brought it up is because of board docs. It was pretty, like it was connected, very intimately with the agenda itself. So I think it's just easier. No,
Yeah, it came out, it was
Board
attached.
president came out after, right?
No, it was attached in board, presentations were attached in board docs, but, because we're switching from board docs, I believe is Dr. Sreen's point, right? Just to explain.
Right. I mean, like at each agenda item, you would click and then you would see the little icon. So just
Mike, if I could suggest, let's put it in the agenda for the meeting as a follow-up, but let's also put it under facility updates along with the intermediate school exterior updates that are there.
We will get this posted in as many places as possible because I truly do want, like it. I want to get this out because this is important stuff that we're talking about.
If we can make it work, let's put it up on the social media sites just to hit another level of communication to the public.
Now that's like way beyond what I could do, but we have
I
people.
didn't instruct you to
We
do
have
it.
people, right? Okay.
But again, that might go to why we need a person that could help with the foundation or could do social media, a role we should consider. I will echo what Emily echoed there.
I like that, Bill. I like that. I like that idea. Tag that on. That's a good idea.
All right. I'll put an invisible link. So, replacement of current ward, so what we're doing, right, is that we're replacing the natural grass with a high quality. The committee has identified a very good product, right? Not the, it's not best ever you can buy, but it's a very, very good product. Including a shock absorbing pad underneath the playing surface, to make sure that this is really a very good, very, very good surface. And again, committee members can add on to this.
I was gonna say, let me add a bit about the carpet and the pad. If you think too, even in your house, this is a great illustration, and actually the company that we are recommending, Shaw, makes carpet for homes, okay? But if you upgrade the pad underneath that carpet in your home, you get extended wear of that carpet. You also get that nice cushy feeling that you get to walk on in the morning too. It's not that different here in that when you're putting in the surface, the field surface, putting something underneath it both extends the wear of the carpet itself and works very well with the fill product. It also increases the shock absorption even under extreme weather conditions like, the field being frozen. So it gives you that extra layer of wear, but it also gives you a layer of protection in terms of the shock absorption that can potentially reduce concussions, can also reduce the hip and knee injuries, things like that occur on any field. But it's just, it's one of those evolutions because anyone that's been on old turf, and you can probably go over to Lehigh still because the field hockey team there plays on very old, like over concrete surface. There's not much give, there's not much cushion. With this, there will be cushion, there will be give. You get tackled on it, it's not going to be like you're getting slammed into concrete. Well, and that's the other thing is the multi-use. So if you just had to have a field for football, that's one thing. But being that we have field hockey, we have boys and girls soccer, boys and girls lacrosse, and football, all that will be on this field. I don't think I'm missing a field sport. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I missed any of the major ones that will be on there. By, well, that'll be in the end, yes, and I'm excited about that. But of the field itself and the usability and being able to have a ball that rolls for field hockey and for soccer, but still have the traction that you need for football, etc. This will accomplish that multi-sport use and give us the durability and give us the ability to get exponential practices and games out of the field for, probably at a minimum 10 to 12 years is what we could anticipate before we even need to remotely consider replacement of it.
And then,
Oh, yeah, the other thing about Shaw that was really kind of cool, when you install a turf field and you have the lining, Shaw can incorporate at least at the time of manufacture, so when the carpet's made, they will put in at least 3 different sports lining for the field play, the regulation lines that need to be on there. Other manufacturers would have to cut and slice to put those in on the field when it's being installed. So essentially, we're going to cut the field less to put in the playing lines that we need, which should also increase the durability and the wear of the field and less likelihood to catch and bring something out.
I have a quick question. How many, I see the next thing on your list there is the worn track. How many lanes is the track?
I believe we've talked 6. If through value engineering, they can get us to 8, that's a consideration, but 6 is pretty much the standard that
You need
used
8
at the
for
high
to
school.
like host districts and stuff, right?
There's debate on that.
and then, in terms of, and I don't know, I'm just asking because I don't know enough about track surfaces, but is there, a different level with respect to safety and shock absorption? I mean, I read the durability, but
Yeah, it's more the durability. you know.
not really a difference.
The safety, sure, if someone falls, it's there, but it's more of the durability and how many years you can get out of the surface, and can you add to the surface later on to extend its life too. And the other thing that's really key for us is, if you remember a few years ago, we've been having bubbling issues with the current track. And much of that, according to Architera, is attributed to the lack of the clay soil having been appropriately remediated when it was installed. That will be resolved through this construction project also, that we'll be putting it over a surface that is appropriate, will drain. So whatever surface you're putting there will get an extended lifespan.
And so we also are replacing the field lights. Now is the time, because if you don't replace the lights and you put down the track, and you kind of dig the track to replace the lights. So it's appropriate, both the function of the lights and the timing of it. We're going to demolish and replace the home side bleachers. Cost estimates are still being developed as issues such as the removal of excavated soil are resolved. So for example, if they take all the soil out, that's a much bigger cost than to find a place to use the soil. So we think we're going to be able to find a place to use the soil and get credit for $100,000, right? So we're still working through some issues with respect to final costs. We're not expected to exceed $6.6 million, and the design build process is designed to limit, if not completely eliminate, change orders, which is not necessarily the case with the spec bid build model. So we anticipate this to be firm, barring totally unexpected circumstances, big, massive rock, which again, we're not anticipating because we did the geo testing and that prior to this. So as far as what is next, a final construction document will be developed and provided to our solicitor for review. The document will be distributed to the board for review, and the document will be publicly posted and placed on the August 22nd agenda for the board's consideration. That's the stadium project. Any questions on the stadium project?
Are we doing anything with the concession stands or locker rooms, or are we leaving them vacant?
So within the plan that has been being worked on since 2020, the guidance that was provided is that we would not do anything with the concession stand currently. We also would not be addressing the locker rooms. One of the concerns I have, and honestly, the other reason why it was very valuable to go towards the recommendation that we have, the other two were looking at an engineering issue to go over the existing concession building. That basically would be an extra cost. It also would prohibit necessarily, or at least cause additional cost to how you would build an additional structure later that could be not necessarily under, but incorporated around the stands. The recommended supplier has a different bleacher option with a different company than what the other two were using, that is looking at engineering a stand that would be shorter where the concession building is currently, and then we could change it at a point in time when that concession stand is removed, because I don't see it being a historical structure that we're gonna keep forever. I would love to renovate it currently, but then I think it would be better in the long run to add a concession stand, maybe bathrooms, if we could find a way to add locker rooms or drying rooms even for the football equipment. I know that's been an issue off and on over the years that they've found some solution to. I think the basis of where I want it to be and where I recommend it as a committee would be, regardless of what we choose, we need to be able to add to it later in a cost-effective way. And that was what this particular vendor offered through, again, the engineering and the different options that they were considering for bleachers. That would honestly be a wonderful project to do with private community funding, to build a field house or some type of a structure there, would be very beneficial. And if we could find some public dollars to match it, that would be a plus.
Bill, thanks for that description. You're basically talking about then, just so I can reiterate what I think you're saying, the basic slope of the current home bleachers is going to be the same, but there's going to be like a cutout in them somewhere so that the elevation will accommodate adding on to concessions?
I'll let Lou describe that. I know he's gonna show plans to us, I think, later, perhaps at the end of the month. But
Okay, if this is later, I don't mean to jump
the
ahead.
slope,
I was just
the
trying to picture.
length and the slope will change, but to the
Make it
simplest engineered way, without getting into large, like steel structure beams and such, was to simply take them up to a point and stop them, but then you can add to it later once the building is no longer there. So to be
Add to the
almost like a
bleachers.
gap in the bleachers, that they'd go up about 10 rows and stop in that particular section, but the areas around them will continue to go up.
And the slope of the current home will be comparable to the slope of the new bleachers. That is what I'm picturing, in order to accommodate the same number.
They all have to meet basic safety code.
Sure, but
I think
we'll have the same number of
in
seats.
reality, once it's built, I think the slope, the rise and run will actually not be as steep as what it is now. Plus you will have railings
Oh,
along.
yeah. It'll be a huge improvement, those railings.
It was dramatic improvement.
And we won't lose seating with that.
And
Or-
there's very slight increase in seating.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Very, very slight increase.
That's the point I was gonna just interject. Right now, they're currently looking, we don't have the finalized drawings from the other company, but they've already been in contact, and they believe they have a more flexible design that'll allow everything that Bill had just put out, but we're still gonna increase on seating. Because that was one of the mandates that we, keep what we have and hopefully increase, but we certainly didn't wanna lose.
Right, so a very slight increase on seating is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing, with the potential to
With
expand.
slight, probably, what was it, 300
Yeah.
additional seats versus 600 additional seats?
Yeah, or 175, depending on what they do. I think
Okay.
it was the ballpark. Yeah.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So it's coming up and later in the month, we'll be communicating during the month, and then we'll hopefully be having a vote on this. So, having done the strategic objectives and the stadium project, financing of facility projects. So we're engaged in 3 construction-related projects. The stadium project that we just discussed, the exterior wall remediation at the intermediate school, and that cost is undetermined. Dewey Engineers, we've hired them. They are currently in the process of doing testing and evaluation. I think the whole idea is, let's say, measure twice, cut once. They're very, very focused on getting this right. But as they try to diagnose the situation, they are rightly unable to give us a cost estimate. The cost of Dewey itself is about $100,000 just for the analysis. And they're earning their money. But we do not know what that is going to be. And we also have, again, major maintenance, building level projects. HVAC at the high school is going to be high on the list, but we have grants for that. We have our COVID grant money for that project, a very smaller scale roof HVAC project. So we have a need for funds.
So can I ask a question about that? I'm sorry. So the community was promised the pursuit of sponsorships to help get better facilities for the district. I'm just wondering, were we able, I know it's been rapid turnaround, we're trying to move ahead quickly because we've been waiting long enough, I think, for these improvements. But has there been any further discussion or outreach to organizations or companies or networks in the area with respect to sponsorships to help fund some of this? Especially, I mean, I think some of the earlier discussion. I mean, we've been kind of doing Q&A as we go with respect to topics. So why am I the only person being stopped from asking a
I will
question?
come back to that. I will come back to that question. So the challenge, we know we're going to have spending, we need to plan for it, we don't know how much, particularly because of this intermediate school project, which I think is very much in question. So, as I said, there's uncertainty around the cost estimates. Funding for the projects will be derived from some combination. I mean, there are limited places we go putting sponsorship aside, but largely we will have to be relying on some combination of bonds, bank loans, and existing fund balance. Bonds often produce the lowest interest rates and have high transaction costs. Bank loans provide the ability to borrow as needed, have lower transaction costs, but have higher interest rates. The interaction there lends us to think that large projects with large amounts of money are likely more appropriate for bonding, whereas smaller projects where the lower interest rate can overcome the transaction costs, smaller projects are more tuned for bank loans, because while the interest rate might be higher, the transaction costs are lower. Also, with the bank loan, you can draw money only as you need it, to pay interest on money only as you need it, which is not necessarily the case with bonds, where you just get a large sum that you have to spend over the course of time. And then also, to the district's credit, to the board's credit, Southern Lehigh School District has a fund balance of $13 million, which can be applied to construction projects, mitigating the need for bank loans or bond issues. So our question is, how do we do it? What is the best combination of financing options that bring us the greatest value? And at every step along the way, we are discussing our planning with our solicitors at King Spry, because again, these are big numbers we're talking about. There's some complexity to this, so we want to make sure we're doing it correct. So this brings us actually to tonight. The board has requested on this agenda to consider approving an agreement with Concord Financial. The district has worked with Concord in the past. Some people might know Mr. Gibbons. He's been here, I think, from time to time to talk about this. The idea of the services this firm will provide is that they will examine and recommend financing options They will assist in acquiring funding at the lowest possible market rates. Concord credibly claims that its fee, which depending upon the outcome of a bank loan or a bond, is $20,000 to $26,000, is often recovered by achieving lower interest rates. We tried to do some independent verification of that claim, and we actually were able to get some anecdotal support from others to say that yes, the fact that they're able to shop and navigate this, and they do it all the time, does allow them to get some discounts that perhaps we would not be able to get on our own. And then no fees are paid unless a transaction takes place. And so the board will be presented with a financing plan at its meeting on August 22nd, 2022. So we are requesting the board tonight to approve an agreement with Concord Financial that simply says that if we decide to take a bank loan for this project, they will shop it for us and help us get the lowest possible interest rate, that they will be paid $20,000. If we decide to issue a bond, and they will take care of the issuance of the bond, they will be paid $26,000. And we think those costs are in line, again, from our anecdotal information we've gathered about the market. And we would like to do this now because we think it appropriate and actually necessary that if we're bringing to you a project in August 22nd for $6.5 million, we know we have a project on the horizon, but we also owe the board a proposal, a concrete proposal for how we're going to finance that. And absent having Concord in place, Mr. Covey and I would discuss this hours at length. Could come up with something, but I don't think the board wants to rely solely on us. The outside vendor is, I think, of great value, and the fact that it will be able to ultimately likely reduce our transaction costs, make it all the wiser. So that's on our agenda tonight for the board to consider, with the idea that we'll get them in place and that we'll be working hard to get a plan ready for the board by August 26th. Any questions on the financing?
I have one.
Yes.
If there's a combination of a loan and a bond,
Yes.
does that mean we're paying the $26,000?
No. What's
And
gonna,
how is the fee structured? Is this based
Yeah.
on the total loan value or bond value, or is it just a flat fee?
it's a flat fee. It's a flat fee. It's predicated mostly on the estimate of what's gonna be issued. But just to give you a little bit of a better idea, when we went out to vet this, like any other professional service, if we were looking at an $8 million bond, the fee would be $26,000. A comparable firm for a neighboring district that had an $11 million bond was $39,500 for those services. So the district's been well served with Concord. And one of the other things that we also explored was with the new relationship with our attorney, King Spry, one of the attorneys there is a bond counsel. So we are able to eliminate some of the typical costs that a solicitor would pass on, and that could save us another $12,000. So it's really a good relationship for us, for the district. And that, Mr. Reed happens to be the bond counsel who's also worked with Concord on many different occasions, and I think currently working with them. So we really got some good information back on what was already alluded to in the engagement letter, but we took a step further to actually factually check it out.
I think the most likely scenario would be either a bond or bank loans and fund balance. Because if we were to do a bond, we would want to finance a lot.
Yeah.
If we wanted to finance less, we would probably do a bank loan and then mitigate some of that with our fund balance. But all that will come out in the analysis, but in no way ever would we be paying 20 and 26.
There won't be a bond and a bank
Never.
note.
And even if there were some element of a loan related to a bond, 26 is the best.
So then am I to understand they're gonna get proposals for both options?
Correct. One of the things
And
with
the
the
fees are
engagement,
based on what we select?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's part of the engagement. They're gonna go to work crunching the numbers, checking the market, and looking at the amount that we're talking about, and then look at both scenarios and what's most advantageous. That's what you're paying for that individual to do.
And if for some reason we don't do either, we don't pay.
So back to my question about sponsorships. I mean, what we've been discussing is the typical array of options that we have to look at when we're funding big projects, right? And we've already discussed in past budget discussions that, you know, you don't want to keep going after the fund balance because of, you know, you need to keep a healthy fund balance. You don't want too much, but you don't want too little either. And having a balance is important. But this question, to be fair, is not really directed at Mr. Pepe or Dr. Mann, because that wasn't promised by either of you. I'm asking more my colleagues that are new who ran on that platform. I just want to know I understand you wouldn't have something already. It's kind of quick, and we want to keep moving with these projects. We've waited a long time. This has been discussed since before I came on. So I just want to know if there's been any progress. I think that's a fair question to ask. If we do have any prospects, is this something that we could talk, you know, based on what Mrs. Gaiman and even you, Bill, were saying about having a person engaged within the administration who can help with alumni efforts and asking the community for certain projects, for example. I think it goes along the same lines in thinking outside the box.
So, and I just want to clarify, are you talking about business sponsorships, or are you talking about a private, like a education foundation?
I mean, I think
being set
both.
up?
I mean, I would be open to both. I mean, I think anything is on the table to help us get, you know, something, because it was disheartening to all of us, I think, that we weren't able to move ahead with some aspects of the project, like
Yeah.
the Performing
And-
Arts Center, right? So I just,
I would say, maybe not by the end of this year, but for me, and I've mentioned this at least 2 facilities meetings now, I think reestablishing and setting up an education foundation for long-term private investment is essential. There is a lot of effort that has to go into that, and not only the kind of refiling of the paperwork, because the current education foundation, if there are even people still involved, hasn't done anything in the better part of 3 years from what we can determine. The individuals that would have to be part of that have to be chosen based upon a variety of factors, but one is their connection to the community, their role in the community. The other thing is, are they willing to go out and pitch to get money from private citizens,
and from corporations, right.
and from other foundations? Okay? So those 3 entities, and it will be the individuals in the foundation that will be doing the pitch.
Right.
You also have to select a partner that will help do the training and to put together the structure that you would operate in as far as fundraising efforts, and probably even redo a feasibility study that was done in 16, update that to see what's reasonable. Is it still 2 million, or is it more, or is it less, given the economic stress that we're under right now in terms of businesses and possibly even private citizens. So those are all things that I think it's very worthwhile to invest in, and that we should invest in. You know, example, my wife's old high school, Radio Latrobe, did this, and they did it over a decade ago. They already had some key people in place, like the business director that was applying for grants and things, that she became essentially the foundation director. But they also deliberately put in people from different business aspects, different levels of experience, certain people being very good at communication, some people being good at finance, etc. But handpicking that team and putting them together with some board representation is vital. But their effort, not only did they raise $5 million for the initial build back then, but from my understanding, they bring in 6 figures every year through alumni and through ongoing efforts. It would be great to be able to get to that, but it's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of time to build it up. And one of the biggest things is we don't have a staff person currently, nor do we have funding for even a non-district person to be paid to do those. So it would be a lot of work for a volunteer. Doesn't mean that we can't do it. It just means that I think we have to be very deliberate and very strategic in what we do and when. That said, I know that there's been talks with different businesses over the years, certainly, in the renewal of the health contract, the training contract, et cetera. There were some things offered. Periodically, there's been things from Service Electric and others. What's out there? Not sure. Once we have a final plan, could we get things such as the scoreboard sponsored? Perhaps we could. But we have to get to the point that we actually have a hard physical project to pitch and to think about who might want to participate and have their name within the stadium or within the accessories to the stadium.
Can I make a suggestion? I mean, I think your point's well taken. You're right. I mean, one thing I would suggest is, one, we got to start somewhere. So one aspect I think that, and we've talked about this as a group at multiple meetings as things to work on, is communication, right? Having a clear message to the community with respect to what's going on in the district. Sometimes it's individual buildings. I think if you were to start having you could hire one person, or even when it comes to communication, we may have to hire somebody. But when it comes to the other outreach type things, you might actually find members of the community who are willing, because of their business ties and because their children are the district. A lot of people seem to be wanting to help when you see posts on social media or emails, right? So that's one thing. But the reason I talk about communication is if you have a clear message of goings on within the district, not just on Facebook, but maybe even a Facebook feed that's a little bit more updated and catches the eye, you could utilize that in order to get corporate funding. You know what I mean? Like, you make yourselves more attractive to both alumni who are like, oh yeah, that was my alma mater, I want to support it, and corporations potentially to participate in that kind of sponsorship, right? Rather than cold calling, that type of thing. Just a suggestion that maybe we start.
It would not be cold calling. And I mean, I'm literally talking that the individuals, when they go to make these pitches, you're going in to a business meeting that you've planned extensively for.
Well, no, I'm not saying, I'm not saying if you have a
social media
message.
is not going to get it done.
I'm not saying that when you would have that meeting, of course you're going to prepare for it. I'm saying that at least if people know more about us, you might actually get a response that's more positive. That's what I'm saying, right? That I'm saying the connection is there, right? Like, you don't just, it's the sleepy little, right? You want to actually, I mean, there's not that, we have some great businesses in the area that might be willing, because you get a tax break, right, for your when you do good for others as a corporation, right? So there's, even though things with COVID have been tough economically, people are coming back and they're making plenty, especially as inflation goes down. It's just a suggestion that we start working on something in that effort, I think sooner rather than later, because we're going to continue to need stuff.
I don't disagree. If we could have a staff person, that would be a step in the right direction. I don't think, unless they can find dollars somewhere, that's going to happen immediately. But I think exploring, and as we put together a plan, because we can't do this haphazardly, I think it's something that we can investigate in early 2023 in terms of getting an education foundation up and running. That's got the right people to be successful and to raise millions, not a couple thousand.
I'll just put a bookend on this thing, and we can move on. I would maintain that as we see here tonight, we're working on strategic planning. The fact of the matter is that when you have an undertaking like this, where you're planning on raising 7 figures, we need to put together a strategic plan. I think that is probably what many people would probably say we will do. It's something that I would like to do. We need to march with an objective and a goal and have a plan to it. And part of the initial plan here, aside from getting all of this done that we're talking about tonight, is to understand what the needs are and start fleshing that out and resurrecting the educational foundation. I talked about that before. I think it's something that's vital. Other institutions I'm involved in do it, and it will take time. But, we need to get this plan together first so we understand what is out there and what the needs are so that we can go into it with a strategic and organized game plan so that we can maximize our efforts and maximize the return of it. So that's all.
But if we're ever planning on utilizing an educational foundation, we should probably start doing a little bit more than talk about it, right? Like, because it takes so much time.
Look, this has been an issue now for years. I think the last thing I saw for the educational foundation was that there's $30-some thousand in it, and it was not maintained. So at this point, it needs to happen. We were already talking to the individual who provides tax returns, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that that's going to start. But at the same time, we've got to have a plan together as to how and what we're going to do with it.
So then
That's all I'm saying. It's not organized, so we need to do that.
So can we get that plan?
So I think there's some agreement that we need to look at multiple resources for paying for these large projects, including bonds and potentially bank financing and gifts from the community. I don't think any of us have any agreement with that. And that's gonna take some planning. I'm not sure we're gonna crack that nut in a meeting tonight, but it is on the agenda, and I look forward to working through those challenges over the next year. But start with the outline, start with the plan. I think we need to move forward with the financing and get this resolved. But I'm not putting that aside, and I hear you all. I think it's a really good project.
Just one quick comment. I mean, it doesn't have to be a facilities-led initiative to get the foundation together. In fact, there are multiple board members here. It sounds like you're very passionate about it. If you would like to be one of the board members, because ideally there should be at least two.
Actually,
involved
no.
in it.
Actually, foundations are completely independent of the school board of directors, if I'm correct, and the administration. Those foundations that are serve academia are independent.
Yeah,
So it's not driven by the
independent,
school board or the administration.
but at least in the ones I've seen across the state of Pennsylvania, there's usually at least one, if not two board members that participate in the foundation and are part of the chairing committee, if you would. So just something that can,
And in an effort to get this off the ground.
My
and to help-
understanding of that from legal resources is that is a real conflict of interest, and that is not what actually occurs, okay?
In an effort to get this off the ground, as I said before, I attended a few conferences and sessions on how to successfully help your school maintain and launch an education foundation and charity. And the number one ingredient in every one of those is a paid staff member, either part-time or full-time, at central office, linked to central office, whose salary is completely covered by those funds brought in. That is the number one key. So
It's covered by the foundation fundraising,
It is.
not the district and taxpayer.
That's what she said. No, but yes, that is what I said. However, the initial, in order to hire someone, you have to initially spend a salary, which is then within a few years completely covered, and then some by the funds coming in. It's initial cash outlay of some sort of salary, but within a year or two, it is completely covered.
Okay,
So
with
that, as I see, is
Okay,
being, and
without our
yes, Bill.
city,
Yeah,
without our
but MJ, would you
speculating
please,
here
hold on.
based upon our
MJ?
individual histories and
Ms. Reinhardt?
experience. What I'd like to do is
Would
move
you
the meeting
please not
forward.
talk over me and let me finish a sentence like you let Bill finish his sentences? You interrupted Priya, you interrupted me, you have not interrupted Mr. Long or Mr. Lysette. I was just asked the same courtesy.
I try to
That's
interrupt
all.
everybody, sorry.
You tried to interrupt everybody, all right.
What's your
So-
additional point?
My additional point is, collecting my thoughts. So, as far as someone taking that on, I think the first step is this board to hire someone. That was the point I was trying to conclude. And two, my understanding is the same as Mr. Lysette's, which is it does need some sort of commitment from central office, and it does need to link to that organization, and it does also need some sort of commitment from a board member or two perspective.
We passed a budget. The board does not not hire employees.
I know, Mr. Lysette was suggesting that we get this off the ground and start and suggesting board members, take part. I'm saying I think the first step is what I have outlined.
Okay, what I'd like to do is table this discussion for further workshop, where we put it on the agenda and have a discussion about how to raise private dollars, okay? But right now, we're at a place in this meeting to consider Concord as an advisor. Okay,
Yes.
so I mean, if you're all in agreement, we can put this on another agenda for a workshop regarding private finance or private funding, okay, and options on how to do that.
Yes, I think administration look very much forward to engaging in that conversation, for sure. On a positive note, I will tell you, our partners at St. Luke's do make substantial contributions to support our programs each year, and I have restricted them for the stadium project. And so we do have a substantial yearly contribution during the course of that agreement that was produced, and those numbers, those dollars are strictly restricted for that purpose. So it's a big thing, but it's maybe the first step of much more positive things. So we'll have that on, you'll see that motion later in tonight's agenda. We have the health and safety plan is our next topic. Pennsylvania public school districts are required to review their safety plans. There's a link you can actually see here to our safety plan every 6 months. Current guidance from PDE is being updated. Lehigh safety plan incorporates, and again, whatever that says, it's disappeared.
It's a link, I clicked on it.
Is it a link?
It's a link to a policy, Mike.
It's a link to, oh, yes,
And there you go.
the Sunrise incorporates our immunization and communicable disease policy.
Yes, it does.
that
It
the
links
board
very
passed,
nicely.
back
There's a
in
link
the
right
winter.
below that.
So our health and safety plan is driven in large part by our communicable disease policy. New CDC guidelines are anticipated soon, that the emphasized test to stay and 6 feet social distancing, which is a link to an article in the Popular Press there. The Federal Department of Education, this, I think will irritate everyone in this room, and especially the members of the board. Federal Department of Education's What's New website has not been updated since March. I just could not resist putting that in there, given the struggles that we've all been through, The district will continue to monitor and report cases publicly as required by PDE. So we'll have our dashboard up. So long as we're required to report information to the state, we thought it fair to put that up on the website. And guidance regarding isolation of positive cases is anticipated soon from the Department of Health and the Department of Education. So that plan, please not require board votes, but we need to publicly review it. The actual plan is linked there if anyone wanted to click on it. And that's really all I have on the health and safety plan.
I had a question. So basically, just so it's clear to everyone, the last point, we're waiting to see, what recommendations from PDE, I'm assuming, are laid out with respect to obviously, we're still going to counsel parents if they feel like their child has COVID, to keep them home like any other illness, like the flu, for example, so you don't infect others. But I'm assuming we are hoping to get information, because I know it varies right now with respect to certain employment, certain networks, for example, have a different take as well. So how long they should be out and whether they need to it's just so it's, my hope would be that you would have that information by the next meeting, since it's the last one before school starts. So maybe you could at least have an update.
As soon as I get it, I'll update it.
At the next meeting,
I was
regardless, either negative, nothing, or.
I'll send it out as
something.
soon as I get it to the board, but I was actually hoping to have it now.
Well, I meant to the public, hopefully,
Oh,
just
no,
before
everybody,
school
yes.
starts.
Yeah.
My other question, and this was really, it's kind of related, it came up during visitor comment, the green slips, because that was initially pulled because of COVID, green bus slips, and maybe because I don't see a new business section, that's why I'm asking now, because it's somewhat related.
I don't know about the green slips. I don't know.
But I did
Green slips are
see-
initially for contact tracing, because it would be difficult
Right.
if students were switching
But I did
buses.
see something on some page that, I don't remember which school it was, that we would no longer be doing green bus slips to allow students to
Yeah.
take a
Here's
different
what I'm
bus
saying.
home.
I don't know the specifics. I
Okay.
do know that, from previous experience, that having kids kids ride whatever buses they want to go on is from a management point of view, very difficult. We don't know where kids go.
But green bus slips are parental, like the parent has to sign off on it within, I think, by the morning of, 48 hours. Yeah,
before.
so
It must
it's
be-
not like a willy-nilly thing. I'm
No,
just,
right.
because I mean, I can understand the need sometimes because somebody might carpool your child to an activity because parents are working, just, and I think that's a concern probably shared by many, including myself.
No, I know, and so, again, I don't know the specifics, I should probably not talk, but I know that while we do want to get people to different places, the idea that you're going here, you're going there, and it's 2 days, and we want to know where you are and what bus, it does create some very serious challenges with respect to tracking students where they are.
We've always done it though.
And so
What's
I don't know what it is, well, I'll find out what it is, but we need
You'd
to.
at least find out what
Yeah,
it is.
so I don't think it doesn't contact tracing anymore, that might have been the initial thing, but we'll find out and we'll get back to what's going on. So, but I do not know the.
I'll reiterate from what Ms. Holt said, that there are parents that very, very much relied on that in the past, and they were really counting on it, counting back, because there's a lot of cases, even like mom and dad are going away, so Johnny's going home with Susie on the bus next week, or on Friday, because she's staying with Johnny or whatever, and there were a lot of instances where those slips were allowing a child to go home with another student was important.
And it wasn't a blanket statement or a done deal. Those were sometimes because the bus was completely packed or because of transportation, certain buses are just very full. They were also sometimes denied with the reason that there's no room or sorry, we have too many that day but yeah, I appreciate the tracing of students and the need to know who's in what seat on what bus when. And I thought that in the past that was an effective system and it was eliminated for that. But yeah, I obviously appreciate you need to catch up. I totally appreciate that.
So move on to the health and safety plan. This is, I've been waiting for this. This is really exciting, I believe. And so we run through it quick. I know I've been here a long time, but we said actually last year, college tuition is increasing at breathtaking rates. It's out of control. Student debt has exploded, and even if you get in and if you can afford it, outcomes for college students are very poor with respect to completion rates or completing and getting meaningful work. You can see here that, to support that, inflation increased from 1980 to 2020 at 228%, 5 times as much the increase in college costs. Right? Out of control. And what's happening to our communities, to our nation with respect to college tuition. And in addition to increasing costs, completion rates are a big challenge. All right, so if we look at just some typical state schools, schools in Pennsylvania, Bloomsburg, for example, accepts 88% of those who apply. Of that 88%, 65% graduate in 5 years. There's not even a statistic to find how long it takes to 4 years. And so you can see these graduation rates are of concern, right? And I will often say that the only schools you can be assured of graduating from are schools that you will not get into in the first place. All right. So at Penn, for example, you have a 96% chance of graduating, but you only have a 10% chance of getting in. And this leads to probably the most concerning slide of all, and I showed this to people in the past, that it is not that your chances of graduating college are far more dependent on your family's wealth than it is your academic aptitude. And you can see that students with the highest aptitude in math, but whose family comes from the lowest socioeconomic quartile, have a 21% chance of graduating college in 5 years. If you flip that around and you take the lowest achieving or the students with the lowest aptitude in math, but who come from the most affluent families, their chances of graduating are double. And this is not a surprise, I don't think, when you consider what has happened to the cost of tuition over the course of time? It's exploded. And so, and the link down here comes from the National Center for Education Statistics. This is, I think there's probably millions of data points that go into these statistics. It's alarming. And I show this because it's an example of a barrier, right? And our goal here is to help our students, especially those who need it most, right? Most at risk, most underserved. We have to help break those barriers, and I think our dual enrollment program is a step in that direction. I just throw this out if anyone is interested. From the Georgetown University, the Ford School of Public Policy, talks about teaching kids to read and breaking barriers in college, which is two of the things that we do focus on here, because I think it really will serve all of our students, especially those underserved the most. And then kind of as a basis, philosophical basis or underpinning or framework for what it is we do and why we do it with respect to college credits, is that social equity and the intelligent use of resources require that validated learning be appropriately recognized wherever it takes place. And I translate that to say that if our kids here are doing college level work, and we could demonstrate that they're doing college level work, they should be earning college level credit, particularly given the economic barriers that exist once they get to college. And again, it's an issue of social equity and appropriate use of resources. So Southern Lehigh School District has significantly enhanced our dual enrollment offerings. College courses can be taken at significantly low and no cost. Credits are highly transferable. Southern Lehigh students have the opportunity to accumulate large numbers of credits that will break barriers imposed by higher education. And one of the themes that we spoke about tonight is communication. And while we have set up what I think will be, people will agree, a great dual enrollment program, we are deeply committed to communicating that to our students and their families. So let me click this link. All right, this is a page that we have ready to go. I hope people can see it or you can see it on your computer. That talks about dual enrollment at Southern Lehigh High School. And I want to thank Dr. Trinkle, Mr. Miller, Mr. Winslow for putting this together. All right, and so we have dual enrollment programs. And under each of these universities is listed courses that our students can enroll in while they're students at Southern Lehigh, while simultaneously enrolling in the respective university. And upon successful completion of these courses, be able to get 3 college credits, or I think in some cases actually even 4. And so when you look at a student coming in and this is not just seniors, right? This is open to freshmen. And so as you arrange your course schedule, and again, not all of these courses by any means are AP. Some of these are very accessible courses to a broad range of our student population. You will be able to earn your credits. And I'll tell you the value of this. And I'm going to scroll down, and this is a resource at the bottom. And that is transferability. You may say, well, I'm really not going to LTRI-C, right? But if you're going to Penn State, if you're going to Kutztown, if you're going to Westchester, you might as well have taken those classes at those universities because they transfer. And so the idea is, as I would do this, that a student would be able to, for example, get rid of all of their general elective requirements. If they want to go to school to be a chemistry major, right? They'll have 25, 30, as many as 60 credits, all right, that will allow them a backstop when they experience challenges in school, the opportunity to do a dual major, the opportunity to study abroad, or the opportunity to graduate early and reduce the amount of cost that's impairing them from getting to the degree. Or maybe just go to college in the first place. All right? As a first year, perhaps maybe first in the family, college student, that's a great amount of trepidation and fear, and they can say, I have 24 credits. I've already been to college. I have credits. I can do this. as opposed to kind of walking in the first time with 0 credits wondering what to do. And then, and so under this transferability, there's all sorts of resources. You can type in the exact course you're taking at Southern Lehigh, type in the school you want to go to. Villanova, for example, will accept some of the classes that we offer. Not all, we have to be careful about. So this is a very, very good opportunity. And the one that's a little bit different is Mansfield University Early Start Program. If we click on this, it'll give us the actual schedule for Mansfield in the fall and going forward. And it tells the family how to register for the course and take it for free. Now, Mansfield courses are not dual enrollment in that they will not satisfy a requirement for high school graduation. But if I'm a student, say I have a study hall, and I want to take any course on this syllabus or on this course catalog that Mansfield puts out, it's all asynchronous online, and I could earn 3 credits in a field that maybe I'm just interested in, and ultimately get 3 credits to pass along to whatever institution I go, because Mansfield's credits, like these others, are very, very transferable. Yes?
With Mansfield joining with Williamsburg and what was the third school that it joined?
Lockhaven.
Thank you. Has there been any change to the program
I am
because of
happy to
that?
say that the board approved the thing with Mansfield. I don't think you approved, because I assigned something that changed that agreement to say that it's now the Commonwealth University.
Sure.
So this arrangement, we might have to update the graphic,
Right.
actually applies to the Commonwealth University now in Pennsylvania. So I imagine this value of it has expanded because we have an agreement in place that addresses that very legitimate concern that you expressed.
Can I ask, I have a question
Yeah.
slash, I guess, favor or request.
Sure.
This is phenomenal. I've been through this last year and I'm doing it again this year. It's really confusing.
Yes.
It's
It is.
perfect. And now for me, I knew who to ask to find out what I needed to do. Like the parents do some, the school does some. You have to fill some out and take it in, and then this teacher has to. There are all these hoops you have to jump through. And like I said, I knew who to ask, but there's a lot of parents that don't. And there are people that I'm afraid are scared off by this because it's very, very confusing. And I'm wondering if there is some kind of
And
cheat sheet
yes.
or instruction thing.
So right, because this will fail if we don't tell people about it and get them working on it. So on this sheet, under registration information, for example, Lehigh Carbon Community College, if you hit this little arrow, it actually gives you all the instructions that you're supposed to do to get into this one. And our guidance office is going to be critical in providing this information. Students who are enrolled in these classes will get this registration information at the start of the school year. That will allow them to fill it out or bring it home. And we recognize that we have to support our students, all right, to help them navigate this. And the biggest source of navigation is getting the paperwork together in the first place.
There should also be like somebody's, like, the entire page should be full of somebody's email address
Yes,
or
agreed.
phone number. So just, like I said, 'cause people will have questions, because it's very confusing.
And we want to have a forum like this for our parents to talk about what is available to them. So this is but the start. We are committed to this effort. It's going to be great for kids. We're going to have, and again, as I said, we want to grow this, talk about getting associate degrees and all that kind of thing. So this is the beginning, and I think it's a great start. But we will be adding to this and pushing it out and recognizing that while the structure is really good, it won't help us much if we don't have people taking advantage of it and knowing how to take advantage of it.
I actually also think that it would be helpful to do maybe a Zoom night or something with either you or the high school principal or somebody, so that parents get just about this, like explain what it is, explain how it works, and have somebody knowledgeable about it that can answer questions and stuff from parents. I think that would be helpful.
We are committed to doing this right.
Because it's awesome, it's fantastic, and everybody that can should be doing this, I think.
The biggest criticism we'll get, if experience is any guide, is what took you so long, right? Because people get into this and they just love it. And I will say, just my own personal circumstances, my daughter has benefited enormously. Like, I've seen this work, and it will work. Now, there are limits. Like, if you're a chemistry major and you take chemistry, you should be very cautious about counting that as part of your, like, that would not be the thing, all right? But if you're taking organic chemistry, you could afford to take 2 less classes because you filled your electives. Well, that's big, you know? So, we will do this right. We're committed to doing it right.
I appreciate your statement about this as well, so about, eliminating barriers for as many kids as possible. And on that note, I just have a suggestion. It's been, now that, I have kids who've gone through the high school, so I have experienced that frequently students in the high school trying to pack their schedule with some of these varied courses, AP courses, or courses that they can take for dual enrollment. Very frequently, those students will try to arrange their schedule or pack it in such a way they'll sometimes stumble on scheduling, as we all understand. And it is currently a policy at the high school that students who have a study hall, that you mentioned, a great opportunity would be to, for instance, you go to study hall, take a Mansfield course. Perfect. But students who take summer coursework at Southern Lehigh, it's policy if you take a summer course here over the summer, you may not have a study hall in your schedule. I would ask, and I would suggest looking to modifying that policy such that these very kids who are trying to, pack their schedule and figure out as much as possible and help with scheduling in the high school with their own to get these specific courses in, I would ask that perhaps we revisit that policy moving forward such that you could have a study hall and pursue, maybe you want to pursue, it's also a great work-life kind of a balance for kids who are taking a bunch of AP courses to also have a study hall and be able to, take something over the summer. I would just ask that we look at
Yeah, I would concur, because it is a deterrent then to being able to take certain classes over the summer that they're interested in, and also have a study hall because their schedule is so packed that a study hall is helpful.
And then how about this, okay? Carver Lehigh Community College, $30 a credit. And even the other ones, Pittsburgh is 75, Seton Hall is $100 a credit. Just by way of comparison, in-state tuition for Penn State is $77. Right? So for $90, you can take a 3-credit course that transfers right away to Penn State or Kutztown or Westchester, Temple, and very likely or very possibly could transfer some of the higher and private schools. So this is really fantastic. And then we also have a great interest in trying to work with as many people as we can to identify people who have a need and to make sure that we find a way to make sure that for some $90 is a barrier, right? Or if they're taking 9 credits, 270, 360, that's a barrier. So we want to try to find ways to break that down too. And maybe some of that foundation money that we'll be bringing in at the 7-figure level will be able to go into this project as well. Okay. Just some miscellaneous things. Mr. Miller is here on his first official day. So welcome, Mr. Miller. You've been around unofficially for a while there. All right. And then I do absolutely want to recognize the retirement of Dr. Donahue from his position at Southern Lehigh Middle School. Thank you, Dr. Donahue. It's been a very short time we've been together, but I will miss you dearly, as I know will the students and the entire community. So thank you for your efforts. We are in the midst of searching for a middle school principal. Initial screening of applicants is underway. We hope to have a list of finalists and set up some interviews with the board to come to a final decision in the near future. So we'll be asking you to put some time again aside on your calendar. Just by way of house cleaning, facility committee held an executive session following its regular meeting on August 2nd. 2022 for the purpose of discussing litigation, so we'll put that in the minutes. The restroom in the nurse's office at Southern Lehigh High School is under repair and will be accessible by the start of the year. Every member of the board was concerned about that issue when it was brought to our attention. So we'll be able to check that box very soon. Good progress is being made there. I wanted to just kind of throw this out to the board. Parking fees at the high school. Right? We charge $50 to park at the high school. And the bulk of the money comes to the till, right? The central office general fund. And I just thought that, you know, as we look at barriers and, you know, for many, $50 is not that much, but for many, it is. And I was just wondering, to get the board's pulse on, you know, Mr. Pepe would growl a bit, but I think we can pull this off with our budgeting. Any thoughts on maybe saying that we still monitor parking, we still give the tickets, and we still monitor as we always do, but perhaps we forego the $50 fee, because superintendent parks for free here. And I thought, well, what about the kids too? So I throw that out again for your consideration.
Do we, I think we do, but I'm asking the question, do we currently offer those individuals who qualify for whatever, you know, financial reason, we waive that fee currently just as we do the sports fees, is my understanding.
I don't know.
Is
And
that
again,
correct?
free reduced lunch is less of an indicator now because
Correct.
fewer people are applying for it because it has been free, and even the requirements are pretty strict. There are kids who are struggling who may not be on that list.
Right, for free and reduced, but I think there's a separate, I believe, and again, it's been a while, but when you're registering for sports and athletics, I believe there are certain questions you answer separate from, independent of free and reduced lunches. I'm seeing nods from sports parents in the audience. This was my recollection when I went through that. So you could decline free and reduced or not be eligible for that, but still be eligible for the sports fee waiver. And I think this is a similar, so my question would be, are we already waiving that fee for similarly sports, and the folks who would be waived for sports would also be waived for this?
If there are hardships there, that is.
So far as a barrier, that would be my first concern. Because I appreciate that, because I agree with the barrier, but I think also we have to consider the cuts we're asking our teachers and folks in the district to make financially. And these individuals who do not, again, have that kind of a hardship, and you know, we work with those folks and make it easier so it's not a red flag waving, but I think if someone is able to already afford a car that, you know, can sit in the parking lot all day for the use of the student and the insurance, then if we're already considering that hardship, perhaps this is not the year to waive that fee would be my first consideration, because we're already waiving some as a barrier.
I'd just like to ask a question with you, Dr. Mahone, Dr. Trinkle, Mr. Pepe. What is your history in other schools with respect to fees for parking, out of curiosity?
Well, I have experience of you have to buy a ticket, like there's a thing you hang and like expenses. So maybe it was $5 or $10 to get, you know, an actual thing. The thing that I look at this and say, all right, we are raising general revenue from kids, right? That's the thing of it, right? Now, usually we raise general revenue from the taxpayers, as little as we can, right? But we're just asking students to pay a fee that's not really designated for something that they get from a student activity or a trip or something. It's just money that comes to the central office. Now, we're happy to have it. We, I think, are very good stewards of it, but the methodology is something that
So why can't we earmark it for the students? Like that would be if we already have a process in place with respect to financial waivers for those who are needed, could we, I mean, you're gonna tell me why.
It's actually earmarked in the budget. It's a revenue currently $10,000.
and so.
Well, could we ask the central office to then allocate it then, if it's earmarked in a certain way, but could
Well,
we?
It already is, because it basically helps offset the entire budget.
And so I would say that, you know, earmarking it to the students would be perhaps let them keep it in the first place. And then if we were to say, all right, we're taking $50 from these people to support the drama program. Well, the people who are paying it may not be part of the drama program, just to make up one example. And so that's the kind of the thing here. And again, I threw it out. I don't think we'll rise or fall with the answer to this question, but yeah.
I think it's an alright idea to waive it. I think a lot of the kids carpool with each other and take kids home, and nobody ever asks for gas money, and so it might be nice to give back to the kids that end up taking 4 or 5 kids home with them after school, even though they're not supposed to, but Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, just in that thought, it might be nice to let the kids keep their, families keep their money and then they'll give back to somebody else's family.
So the athletic fee, does that go into the general fund also? That was always my impression that it did. So are we also gonna waive that?
Well, I would say the athletic fee, you're paying for a service. Like, in other words.
Well, you're paying for a
There's a-
service in the parking fee too.
Well, but we're not really providing, with athletics, I think it could be said, we hire a coach, we provide equipment,
There's blacktop,
we do certain things.
lining, ceiling.
And
I mean,
that's the extension of it.
and ideally-
So I'm not gonna here advocate for it,
Yeah.
I'm just,
I mean,
I see the
I guess-
distinction between a fee to participate in an activity.
if we ever
$50
got,
is something.
if we ever got to the point where we were gonna fully drop driver training, 'cause I know that that was a discussion recently, I'd rather see the dollars go towards keeping that alive, because I do think that's a valuable service that the community benefits
We can
from.
move on from this, because I don't want this to be.
Are you
I
saying
heard your
you're
bill.
dropping the, you're
Does
dropping
anybody
the-
else have a question or comment on this topic before we move off? Everybody makes their comments?
Well, I have a question before we stop with the superintendent report. It's not about this. Are we done with the superintendent report?
I just wanted to conclude by saying that it was a year ago this night that I was appointed as superintendent in Southern Lehigh. And I just wanted to take the occasion to express my deep gratitude to the board, to the community, for their relentless kindness, the excitement I have and gratitude of the colleagues that I have the opportunity to work with, and the excitement that we have in having lots of really great things to do together. So just thought I would note the occasion and thank everybody for a really good, it's been 9 months that I've actually been here, but a year since I've been hired. And I just want to express my gratitude on this occasion. So that concludes my report and I'm ready for questions.
I have a question about the orientation canceling.
Yes.
So orientation was canceled for everybody, I think except for kindergarten, I'm correct on that,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's right.
I understand that it was very expensive to run orientation, but, was there any other roadblock other than just the expense of like the buses or whatever? I don't know
Yeah.
about staffing issues or whatever, but.
And this was totally me that did this, so I want to make sure that, some of our principals are getting all the credit for this, and I want to make sure. But here's what I thought, right? When it came to my attention that we had like a pre-day, I checked the approved district calendar and saw that we don't have anything on our approved district calendar to say that we have an orientation. When I asked around, people said, well, it's pretty well attended, like 70% at the high school. And I said, well, do we do any orientation? Well, like 8th grade kids do come over to the high school during the fall, to do some orientation, to kind of see the buildings. I developed the confidence that on this first day of school, we could really do meaningful orientation for students. That, very much replicates, not identically, but replicates what's happened on the orientation day. I learned that at the high school, maybe they're only there for about 2 hours of the day. And then significantly, I learned that we run buses K through 12 for that. And sometimes there's 2 kids on a bus, sometimes there's no kids on the bus. And it's, $10,000 easily to have this orientation day. So my first thought was, well, maybe we just cut the buses. Right? And then we go back to, well, who then is most unlikely to be able to come in, right? And that's kids whose parents are working, who may not be able to get a ride. Again, talking about those barriers that we've said. And secondly, truthfully, at 70% attendance at the high school, for example, 30% of the kids are not there. And 30% of the kids, for whatever reason, are not coming in to experience this. And so we could have nearly 100% on the day that we're here, in addition to what we do in the previous year, as far as showing them the ropes.
Well, I think a lot of the kids that don't come to the orientation, because I know this was the case with my kid, was, he played sports. Or he knew the building, like, he didn't know exactly where his classes were, but he knew where the gym was, he knew where the cafeteria, like, he knew where the office, he knew where everything was already, so he was like, I don't really need to go see it.
Maybe,
But,
and maybe there's someone playing sports who doesn't know anything about that, because they're playing sports, they don't get a chance to come. So,
my thinking is that you have these freshmen coming up, and they're already so filled with anxiety for starting high school. And now, on the first day of school, they're gonna have these enormous seniors, that they're already getting picked on because they're freshmen, we all know what's happening, and we all know what happens. They're already getting picked on just because they're freshmen, and now you've got these seniors and sophomores and juniors, and all these kids are there, and now I know that they will be fending for themselves, I know that there will be people orienting them on that day, but I think it's going to be a lot more stressful for them than I think it needs to be, if they would have just had the opportunity, even if it was 10 minutes to just walk through, just to find, okay, there's my rooms, I know where they are, I know where I'm going on the first day of school. Like, that would set, I think, a lot of kids' minds at ease. And I was like, can't we even do like a 2 or 3 hour, like, open house where you can just come
any kid
in
can come in, and we've been saying to parents who call, look, if there's a particular anxiety or concern, we could set something up where kids can come in, and that's been actually happening, it happens all summer. And so if constituents are concerned, and they want to just put us in touch, send us an email, and we've heard some things from, I've had, I think, 3 calls from high school parents, there's been a few. I don't think there's been any calls, or very, very few, at any of the middle school, intermediate schools.
Well, and I was actually very surprised to hear that, because I know at the IS, the biggest source of stress for the 3rd graders going into 4th grade is the lockers. Like, these kids buy lockers at Walmart to practice with them because they're so nervous about using a locker. And on that orientation day, the kids would be assigned a locker, and they would get their combinations right there, and they could sit out there for half an hour and practice.
But is there still, I think there's an evening open house at the IS, is that correct?
That's back to school, I don't think that's.
There's one on the 25th, I think.
Again,
Yeah, it's on August 25th though, it's before school starts.
I'm just me, right? I'm pretty confident they're gonna be okay, right? And I also think that, we have the orientation, the seniors are still gonna be the seniors. The juniors are still gonna be the juniors. And on the 3rd day, you're still gonna be stressing when you do the locks. And I think that we have great people and great students who will be supportive of them. And I actually think we'll have a higher degree of participation when we do it on the first day. We will not be running buses for no reason, and we won't be cutting buses, and not intentionally, but from a policy point of view or an operational point of view, isolating people who we know can't get here without the buses. So I get it, that it's a legitimate discussion to have on pluses and minuses, but I'm okay doing it, but of course, whatever the board wants.
2 items. The freshmen to the high school already have an orientation in the spring. My daughter was actually an ambassador for that, but, so they are here, so does that means that we have 2 orientations for the high school right now? Is that right?
That's not when you know your teacher.
Like, where now they have their class list, they have their assignments, like, now they know, like, they can go and find where their classrooms are. So it is a little different. I understand your point, and I don't disagree with it, because they do get to go through here on a little field trip, but it's different. It's also, that's a long time ago, like, they don't remember that, they weren't paying attention, they were having fun when they were walking through here the first time.
Okay, number 2 is, Dr. Mahone, Dr. Trinkle, what is the trend in other school districts that you've been at with regards to orientation for the schools?
We never run buses, let's say that. And like, there are little things over the summer, people are invited in, it's informal. But I think the big orientation usually comes on the first day of school.
So I'm trying to keep an open mind, but I think what would help is because, for example, for the high school, for incoming freshmen, it was posed as, that there were going to be modifications, for example, to the first day to make it kind of like a blend between a first day and orientation, which I think is fine. But I think it would be helpful to know what that means because the Sapphire got updated, I guess, today. And so I think day 1 is blank for the high school. So I think, some kids are taking classes with upperclassmen. So does that mean those, because I've heard that, some people have asked me, so does that mean so is there orientation for kind of everybody that day, regardless of what year you're in? Or are you missing the first day of that class because you're in the special schedule, because it doesn't list it as a normal block schedule, just seems, so that's led to some, I think, some more anxiety about the process. So I think maybe just letting people know what the plan is for that first day loosely, just to kind of, for each school would be helpful.
Because they're in the hall, we're not in the locker, right? So
Yeah.
we will make sure we have very good people who will come up with something that makes sense and that.
I think just tell people what to expect. I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, I have, sorry, was I interrupting? Okay, thanks. I have just 3 points, and then I understand there are pluses and minuses. 3 points I have is, I appreciate your first point, Mr. Monk. I think the chief difference between the tours that go on in the spring, which are very helpful, and the tours that go on in August are that we no longer distribute. When I was in high school, you got a paper map, and you went over that map, and the kids who had high anxiety could find their classrooms and know where they're going on the map. We no longer distribute maps for safety reasons, and so kids have, no idea necessarily where their classroom is. So that would be one, and so it's nice, even if it were an evening where the building is open, you're welcome to walk through. Which brings me to my second point. I have concerns that once this email went out, parents who called were told that they could bring their kids through, which is accommodating, and we're here to, serve kids. So that is absolutely an appropriate response. But since that's happening, I would ask that if that is allowed and is happening, we could send out another communication to the community to let other parents know who or perhaps if you're a compliant soul and you say to your kid, this is the announcement that came out, we can't go, but I'm gonna counsel my kid through this and we're gonna make the best of it. And then you find out other people got to, that's just, it doesn't seem to me to be, as communicative and transparent as we could be. And then can't resist, my third point is that from a financial perspective, about $10,000 to run a bus, it seems like a great use of the $10,000 we collect in parking fees per year. That would be my last plug there. It seems like a win-win that we can find, to Mr. Lessett's point, ways to fund with students, and everyone goes to the high school, so you have an orientation, so at least you're not charging a kid. If you can't literally earmark that financially, but it's just kind of a, way to think about kids serving kids and helping kids in financing in the community. Those would be my 3 points. But I would at least ask that if it is open for parents to walk through, and if that is happening, there could be another communication that for those who have anxiety, we have a night, even an evening, and then you don't have to worry about perhaps transportation as much for the working families who have day shifts. Those are my points. Thanks.
Additional communication is coming out regarding those opportunities, and the day in Sapphire is an error in the calendar. Nothing to do with,
See, that's what
on
this
the,
goes to show you.
on the end user side of.
I assumed it was something really well planned.
I can see that, I guess, no, it has nothing to do with that. We noticed that earlier today, and I think it has something to do, Chris and I are working on it, well, mostly Chris, is working on it. I think it might just be a calendar error.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
That has nothing to do with any of the orientation.
Okay, that makes more sense then.
Well, we're 2 weeks out.
Now I'm like, feel much better, because now they're gonna go to their classes, so it's great.
Yeah.
And we're 2 weeks out, so we're 2 weeks out.
And we'll have, that's, I'm not gonna think that's an easy resolution, but I don't think it's going to be a terrible problem to resolve. But additional, Mr. Miller and I have been talking about additional communication, so to communicate what they want to potentially look like.
And to be clear, anybody that's listening to me drone on, I just was asking questions about the factual side of it. What are the trends in other school districts? I knew we had another orientation, so I just need the information if we're gonna make any decision at some point, or if I have anything to do with it.
I don't think we'd be an outlier saying that the first orientation day on day 1 of school. And there may be others who do exactly the same thing that we have been doing. I didn't anticipate this to be the issue that has turned to be, but that's my error, not anyone else.
Any other comments? So let's move on to budget and finance. Rebecca?
Okay, so the only thing that I have that we haven't really spoken about.
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I think the only thing that we really haven't discussed at this point, the state and project financing, I think, Dr. Mann Yes.
Just like, we have the, also the,
Oh, and the
The intersection.
interlocal agreement, yeah, I'm sorry.
Since
So-
we're on Concord, let's vote on that and we can go on to the other agreement. Do we have a motion? Any other comments, questions for Dr. Mayan or Mr. Pepe?
Just clarifying, this is a motion for 4C only? We're not approving anything else?
Correct.
Right.
Thank you. Now, my only comment would be that Chris Gibbons and Concord Financial have been a great partner for many years, and I am happy to support the continued partnership. Thank you for presenting it to us.
And I would just question, or just to verify, I should say, not question, verify that after reading the document, it seems fine to me, but do we have legal counsel review? That's all. That's the only question I have.
Yeah, we actually had legal counsel as part of the discussion before we got the engagement letter.
Thanks.
So we're on good solid footing there. To go back up to item 4A, interlocal agreement, this is just to give a little bit of an understanding.
We don't have to get a vote.
Sorry.
Just for the comments and questions. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? You're, Chris, Dr. Wayne, you approve? Yes, okay. Okay, motion carries. Go ahead.
Okay, third take. On the intersection, I just wanted to give the board a little bit of background for anybody new. And I know I covered it with the facilities committee, and Mr. Lysette said I had a pretty good understanding of it. Way back when they started to look at Camp Meeting Road, 309, Lanark Road intersection improvements, became a partnership with the township and the school district, since it was going to impact the schools as well. And there was a talk of approximately $1 million, 1.2 million, and 600,000 set aside for each party. Subsequent to that, the township did a great job on acquiring a grant, which offset about $900,000 of the work. And as a result, the balance that we need to cover at this point, the 50% obligation dropped all the way to $201,345. The monies were talked about from the previous board that they were going to come out of capital reserve. Capital reserve's got about 1.2 million in it, so it'll have about $1 million after we make this payment. It'll go on the agenda as part of the agreement that you've already entered into. And from all of my review, it's just information that's gotten better for the district.
Good news.
And just a point of clarity for the fiscal stewards that we as board members are, this is something that we were required to finance because the additional traffic, the building of the intermediate school brought to so we didn't just, out of the goodness of our hearts volunteer, we were required by roads to finance the additional traffic. But thank you for that summary, it was great.
And that should cover budget and finance.
thank you. Good. So, we have a few, additions, and obviously, Dr. Donahue's retirement, along with some other employees that will no longer be with us, in the HR section. I just want to make a quick statement. It seems like we have had a lot of resignations. I did a comparison to last year. We're actually down from last year, resignation-wise. Currently, we have 5 positions teaching. I'm just speaking about teaching because we have currently 5 positions available. 3 are still in the interview process. 2 I have recommendations for. They're not on this agenda because I wasn't available last week to meet with the individuals, so I met with them today or tomorrow, and you'll be seeing their names at the next board meeting at the end of the month. But we are filling all our positions. We have applicants for all of our positions currently, and we're moving forward. So just so that everybody's aware, because there's a lot of talk around the state and the country of the shortage of teachers. We are, in Southern Lehigh, we have applicants. Some positions more than others, obviously, but we do have applicants. With that being said, does anybody have any questions on the information that's posted in the agenda?
I had a question regarding item number, N. Scroll down, sorry, there's a lot. I myself have to do the same. I just fielded some questions from members of the community, so I felt it important to ask some questions about the process, and just for everyone to know the specific position is with respect to the high school fall play director and spring musical director. There were some questions that were raised, and I was hoping, if you don't mind answering them.
I will do my best. I am not involved in the direct interview process for these positions.
Yeah, whoever
They
is.
make a recommendation to me.
Got it.
So I'll do my best to answer.
Well, I mean, I guess what would be helpful, I think, for the community and for myself is to understand what the process is in this type of position specifically, because my understanding is, as opposed to a teaching position, the positions with respect to stipends, for both the middle school and the high school level for the musical and the fall plays, have a lot of interaction, or they're engaged very heavily with students and parents. So I think one concern or question that I had was, were students and parents spoken with specific to their Southern Lehigh School District experience, including, because to be fair, I don't know Mr. Benn, so this is not anything negative with respect to him, but I do understand that there were other applicants as well. And so I just want to make sure that Southern Lehigh School District parents and students who had direct interactions with all, I guess, leading candidates were involved. And then my follow-up question is, because Mr. Ware is so well regarded at the high school, and he's still there, but he's no longer going to be participating as director for these types of things, was he involved in the selection process? Because I think he would have a pretty good idea of, who would kind of be a good person to take on the mantle for a role that he has held for so long.
So if I could just for one moment, I think we are very much approaching personnel issues with respect to the individuals who are involved, and then by extension, who's being recommended. So this is a very important conversation to have, but it would be more appropriate for executive session.
But
Do
we're
you-
voting on it.
Do you want to, would it be appropriate then to table this to answer those questions so the board feels fully informed about it? I'm asking Dr. Shereen because I'm not.
And I apologize, I didn't realize that it was, since I was voting on it, I thought.
I don't think exactly as you phrase it. I think as the answers unfold,
I see.
there's a very, strong likelihood that we would be kind of inadvertently meandering into that area.
I don't want to know anything specific about them, but I guess, I just want to know how we hired them.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
I was just gonna talk in general.
Yeah,
Any of our positions are posted, and the applicants come in, and then the supervisor, principal, or director in charge of that would go through the interview process. Who they involve specifically would be specific to that position, but like our teaching positions, and I'll pick on our elementary teaching positions, Mr. Mansfield and Dr. Kermiak were involved, looking for, and they had 150 applicants. So we did not bring in the community.
No, and that's why I did not talk about any of the other HR positions, because to be fair, it's their building, and if we have any questions, I'm sure we could always ask them, but I trust that process. I think only because this was brought to my attention, I thought it was fair to ask, because these positions in particular, I think coaching similar, right? Like, some people know things about others, and I don't know anything negative about any candidate for the position. I just think it's fair to know more about the process for those that are asking. That's all.
If I'm understanding the process for selecting these stipended positions or funded positions is similar to that of
Correct.
hiring teachers.
Correct.
And I think what you're questioning is the process.
Well, can we remove just N and vote on it in two? I don't see that this is something that's gonna make or break anything at the moment. So if we want to find out more information about it, can we remove just this piece and vote on it at the next meeting after we've gotten more information? With that?
You have some thoughts, I guess?
There were students involved in the interview process, and I believe Mr. Ware was asked
Okay,
to participate. I'm not sure that he.
that's all, I mean, that's all right, I just wanted to know.
So I think from the standpoint of our interview process, it very much mirrored what we do for the teachers or certificated professionals that we hire, very much mirror that first laboring position, which is a newer process for me, a better process for sure. But there were students involved and all applicants were considered. I don't believe there were more than a handful, right, Mr. Miller? 5, right? And all applicants were interviewed?
All those who accepted interviews, yes.
Okay. So that's pretty much as the process as been told in the student engagement as well, which had a very large voice. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, great. All right, so I'd like to take.
Can I ask one other quick question? Thank you for the, Mr. Bishop, thank you for the synopsis. You mentioned that there was at least one, perhaps 2 individuals that will be on agenda that aren't on the agenda tonight. Is that a matter of just asking the administration, is that something that you would need, or would the board be able to amend the agenda to include those individuals? Just, or is that not at that point yet? I didn't know if your statement was meant to say we didn't quite make the agenda, or we aren't yet ready to technically put it on the agenda.
The agenda needs to be published.
Yes, but I believe we can take a vote to amend it for something like this. This is pretty.
Well, one of the things, if you recall, the board did give me authorization to hire people. And so once all the paper is in place, we won't miss a person because it wasn't brought to the board.
Okay.
So we will hire them, but then bring them to the board the next time to verify the fact that I hired them through the authorization that was granted to me.
Great. I was just thinking the next board meeting is after the first day of school, and I would hate for someone's schedule to remain blank or with a TBD or whatever, if that was the case. But if we can move forward and fill those schedules, then thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion? So moved. 6. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All in favor?
This is, I'm sorry, I have a question. This is items, all of them, 6A through,
All of 6.
all of 6, A through wherever it is. Okay, okay, great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. And with that, we believe we are at. Do we have any other visitor comments?
We do.
We do, okay.
Carla Stock.
Hello, this is my first time here. My name is Carla Stock. I'm the mother of 3 children. One just graduated, going to University of South Carolina tomorrow, so I have an early morning. I have a junior, Emily, and I have an 8th grader, Jason. I'm here because Emily has hit multiple roadblocks with our district. One, we received an email today that AP seminar is canceled for this year. She has done all of her summer work at this point and was extremely excited to have Dr. Cartouche as her teacher. So now we heard Dr. Cartouche in June was leaving, and that is a major loss for our district, major. So at this point, I believe you have not hired and you have had the opportunity to hire a qualified teacher to teach that class. Now, I don't know if many of you know, but AP seminar and AP research can help a student get into a very high-level college. My child has some serious schools on her list and would like to go to medical school when she graduates. I feel that our district has now given my daughter this news, and she's not taking AP psychology because it's not attached to AP research. I would like to know what happened and why in the 3 months we did not hire a qualified person to teach this class. And I am angry because this message came out today. What do I tell my child? She hit this roadblock again. Now the other roadblock my daughter hit, and I really have been very quiet about it. Maybe some people in the community have heard. But my daughter hit a roadblock because she is a dual athlete in the same season. And because she's a junior, she's no longer grandfathered in to play 2 sports in 1 season. So cross country, you basically run, and she trains all year. And so cross country, when you run, you have your own personal time. You're not beating someone else. That is your personal time. And the other sport was field hockey. We have had conversation with Mr. Zimmerman, and he told me on April 1st, Mrs. Stock, your daughter will not be able to do 2 sports, no longer. Okay, so you mean to tell, he said that all the students that have been grandfathered in will be graduating, and because I have a senior, I know who those athletes were. I said, are you sure that all those students are going to be graduating? He said, yes. I said, so you mean to tell me when I go to a football game, I won't see a student athlete this year on the football field playing 2 sports? He said, absolutely not. I have to tell you that I do know that these athletes, there's multiple athletes playing 2 sports, and I do understand that they were grandfathered in, but Mr. Zimmerman lied to me. So now I had to go tell my same daughter, Emily, that you do not have the opportunity to play the 2 sports. And she is completely devastated. She wants to leave this district. She wants to go to Moravian. We know the tuition for Moravian is not feasible for a lot of families. I love this district. I want my kids here. We have hit a major roadblock. We have wonderful teachers in this district, and I don't know why they're leaving. So I would like to know what the path is for AP seminar.
Thank you.
I can actually, I will call you tomorrow and I can fill you in on the details of that.
I'll be on a 10-hour road trip, so I'll expect it. Thank you.
All right, very good. Yeah, I'll catch your number as you.
Okay, sounds great.
With that, we are adjourned.